So how is it now having Victor as your son, and both Ethan and Julie, and Henry your old husband, and your new husband died, but Jade is your original husband?
I'm so confused.
Welcome to this video. My name is Christian from BM Premiere, and the last episode of From Season 3 is finally here, titled Revelations Chapter 2. And the episode finally revealed huge revelations, and it all starts with connecting those seemingly separate storylines together. So while Boyd and company are dealing with Elgin knowledge of Fatima's location, Tabitha, Jim, and Jade are about to discover the town's biggest secrets. And let me tell you, it's gonna change everything moving into Season 4. Welcome and let's begin. Alright, so think about how this season's been playing out. We got Tabitha return after seeing those paintings in Henry's basement. Fatima crazy pregnancy journey, her actions including Tilly's shocking death, the mystery of those children, Boyd's Parkinson, and Victor's breakdown for his mom and his desire for answers. It's like the town is throwing all of these pieces at us and we're just trying to figure out how they fit together. But the finale finally connects those dots. Bromville is not just some random haunted town, it's like a cosmic punishment box built on the original sin of the sacrifice of those kids. And the scary part, two people try to stop it, Miranda and Christopher, aka Jade and Tabitha, only to be reborn again and again, trapped in this nightmare for centuries, going back to the 1800s. So this is why we're seeing the history of Fromville sort of repeat itself with Fatima's pregnancy. The town needs that sacrifice, that twisted ritual to keep its evil engine running. And Elgin, poor guy, he's being played like a fiddle, just like those original settlers who sacrificed their children. It's like the town is saying, hey, remember that horrible thing you did? Wanna do it again? Which shows what and who was Fatima's baby all along. And this is why we got Smiley. That's also why Tabitha and Jade are the key players here. They're not just some random victims, they're the ones who came closest to stopping the man in yellow, the architect of this whole mess. And now they're back carrying the weight of their past lives, about to face the same impossible choice again and again. It's like the town's given them a front row seat over and over again. But my question is, then how does the boy in white play into all of this? I have a theory, we'll discuss this in a moment. Now, the episode continues where we left off, where we got Boyd mapping out the search, even got that Renda's Move logo, which I thought was something, but it wasn't. This one, Alice drops this bomb about Elgin. And think about how this connects. Elgin's been acting weird ever since the lady in the kimono started showing up to him. This white Boyd reaction is so perfect.
You took someone I love and you put her in danger.
He immediately knows something's wrong when Alice says,
He said I shouldn't be afraid.
that line makes sure he doesn't leave. Boyd knows they're dealing with someone who's been compromised, connecting to Sarah. When Alice asks him what he's going to do, and Boyd just says,
Make sure he does not leave.
he's already thinking to bring in Sarah, which is why he goes to the church. And here's what makes this episode so brilliant. Boyd knows from experience with Sarah that sometimes you need someone who speaks the town language. So yeah, he's learned from his mistakes. Instead of fighting the town's supernatural elements, he's using them. He understands that Elgin's calm is actually a huge red flag. But let's explain this. Boyd's seen this before with Sarah, with the voices with how the town corrupts people, even with his wife, when Elgin tells Alice about how this was all important, and Alice should not be afraid. It's like hearing echoes of every person the town has been manipulating since the beginning. I mean, we can see it even more now. So for Boyd, Sarah might be their only chance at understanding what the town's doing to Elgin. But when Sarah confronts Elgin, this was not a good choice, and I imagine this was not what Boyd imagined. I mean, this is shown in the conversation with Father Khatri, or whatever twisted form the town is using to test Boyd. So we're in this intense moment when Boyd is dealing with what to do with Elgin, and suddenly there's Father Khatri. But now he's showing up to have this twisted philosophical chat. And think about the timing. It's when Boyd is at his moral breaking point. And here's the really messed up part. Khatri is not really Khatri. He's another face of the town, testing Boyd just like the original settlers were tested. When he says stuff like,
if you do this place is one.
About how Boyd handles Sarah versus Elgin. He's trying to push Boyd towards violence, but here's why this matters. With Sarah, Boyd protected her despite what she did. Now with Elgin, Boyd's considering hurting him. I mean, he didn't thought he was gonna do it, but he did anyways. So Father Khatri is basically saying, you're no different than anyone else. You protect what you love and F everyone who gets in your way. And let me tell you something right now. This is not Father Khatri. Same thing as how Jade saw Tom. It's the same thing. It's just something the town is using. So this conversation now is too personal, too calculated in how it twists the knife. This is the town itself wearing Father Khatri's face like a mask to get under Boyd's skin. And his hypocrisy. It knows exactly how to push Boyd while being the noble sheriff. And here's what makes this scene so brilliant. The entity starts by suggesting torture methods, trying to corrupt Boyd even more, then switches to pointing out his double standards. I just love this because it's showing how the town can manipulate the characters. Imagine Boyd, who's so strong, we can understand Elgin in a way. Even that line about how you were supposed to be better than this is connecting to this. I mean, even that line about why they call it a rock and a hard place, not a rock and a soft comfy pillow. That's not Father Khatri speaking, that's the town cruel sense of humor, which shows something huge. The town doesn't just want to break people physically, it wants to corrupt their souls by forcing them impossible choices, like it did with the original settlers, even though it wasn't their choice. But here's two things that make this even darker. The entity knows Boyd's deepest fear about becoming what he fights against. It's using his love for Fatima as a weapon to break his moral code. Is he Father Khatri? Then what is he?
I'm afraid I can't answer that for you, Boyd.
But let's begin with the first part of this puzzle. Understanding the numbers. All the way in season 1 when we first saw the bottle tree, and in that moment when Boyd took one of those numbers,
1864.
now we thought they were years, which maybe they are, but it could be like a song that has a story to tell. Like how 1978 was the year Victor and his mom arrived, and 1883 that Civil War soldier. So maybe it's a story telling the events of this town. But here's two things set up in season 1 where they're connecting down the line, in this case this season. Now we know who dragged Boyd and Sarah in season 1, this being the man in yellow. And number 2, the sentence about being two worms being split in half becomes two worms.
You know, if you cut a worm in half, it grows back into two worms.
This connecting to Tabitha being Miranda and Jade and Christopher. Now we know who was knocking in episode 1 of this season and who Kenny was referring to in the clinic.
Walking around outside the cabins at night.
Even that conversation with Jim and the extra, or the resident.
Whatever was banging around last night sure as hell didn't sound like those things back in town.
Now let's talk about what happens in episode 10 because this is where everything comes to a head. And let me tell you, the way this revelations hit is like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. So what happens when Tabitha finally remembers who she is? Well, the episode wastes no time showing us the consequences while she's dealing with the mind-blowing answers that she's Miranda, and this where things get seriously dark. The man in yellow finally shows himself, not through some proxy or mind game, but in the flesh. And what happened next? Well, he kills Jim. Why? Because like he says, I told your wife not to dig. This all the way back into season 1. So yes, the writers were playing the long game. So this is not just about stopping them from playing the music. It's about keeping the cycle of forgetting intact. But now it got corrupted. And here's where it gets even more twisted. While this is happening, we got Fatima's situation reaching its breaking point. That baby inside her is the town way of recreating that original sacrifice, which is why we got Smiley. And yes, he's back. I'm also really excited to see what clothes is he going to have as he was born naked. And let's talk about Boyd's final test. After everything he's been through, losing Tianchen, dealing with Parkinson, trying to hold the town together, he faces the same choice the original settlers did, sacrifice one to save many. The way he handles this moment is going to also have huge implications for season 4. I mean, after hurting one of their own, do you think he's going to be the sheriff? No way. This connects to Sarah's sacrifice of Elgin doing those horrible things to him. Between what Sarah does to Elgin and what Jade witnessed in episode 3. I mean, think about it. Sarah taking Elgin's eye mirrors the blood ritual Jade saw. The way she does it is just like how the monsters behave. That line about how she says about Boyd, well, we can see it on her. It really hits different now because Sarah decided not to be a good person like she said. for the appreciation that she has for Boyd, and Sarah sacrificed her soul to save Fatima. She told to Victor how she wanted to be a good person.
Anything to feel like a good person again.
Now look at this is the opposite. Just when she was putting her life together, the town finds a way. But here's where it gets even more twisted. It's like things are repeating itself, just different. And some people are supposed to be doing the same things as other people did in the past. And the real gut punch comes from understanding what the boy in white meant. Everything is changing. For the first time in the town's history, maybe someone remembered who they were in the past. And the cycle of forgetting is breaking down. And that terrifies the man in yellow enough to take direct action. I will come back to the man in yellow again because there's a lot to discuss about him. And time travel. Now let's break down how Jade finally cracks the number code. They're about to reveal something huge. This is not just about Jade solving a puzzle, it's him finally cracking the town's secret language. So think about how Jade is staring at those bottle trays numbers, the symbol he saw back in season 1. We got sequence like 2975, but here's the genius part. Those backwards numbers, they were not random at all. When Jade looks at them, suddenly he can hear the music. I mean, this is next level stuff.
I could hear the music.
The kids didn't just leave random numbers, they left a musical code that survived through time. So why the man in yellow didn't just destroy the tree? Well, maybe he was trapped, and by playing the music, that freed him. So how do they discover this? Well, when Tabitha tries to process the revelation that she's Miranda, and let me tell you, the way this scene unfolds between her and Jade is incredible. So let's break it down. After that mind-blowing moment in the root cellar where Tabitha remembers or has flashback of being Miranda, she's trying to make sense of it all. But here's where Jade comes in and does something brilliant. He explains how energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed.
The first law of thermodynamics is that energy can neither be created nor destroyed.
This is why it's so genius, because it explains why certain moments keep bleeding through Jasper, Christopher, and so on. And it shows how the town preserved those energies. And the question is, then who is that Civil War soldier? Well, maybe, after all, it's Christopher, well, Jade, an older version of Christopher and Jade. So there's a lot of story and events that we have not yet seen. And this connects to why Tabitha and Jade shared those inexplicable feelings about things. And what makes this conversation so powerful is how it's not just about scientific explanation, it's about understanding the town's true nature. They're not just having visions or dreams, they're seeing into actual memories from their past lives. The energy of who they used to be is still there, just transformed. And let me tell you, this is where everything starts clicking together in the most frustrating way possible. And also heartbreaking. I mean, think about how the scene plays out. We got Jim, Tabitha, and Jade in the bus, trying to make sense of all the crazy they have experienced. And what's really interesting is how Jade starts connecting the dots about the children he saw in the caves. You know, the ones laying on those stones, chanting and Huey. But here's where it gets even more intense. He mentions looking up and seeing these massive roots forming that symbol that's been driving him crazy. And then bam! Tabitha drops this bomb about what the boy in white told Victor. Those kids, they were not just victims, they poured their hopes into those roots, creating both the symbol and the bottle tree. But what makes this thing so powerful is Jade's reaction. I mean, the guy's been obsessing over this symbol forever, and suddenly Tabitha just explains it. His anger is pure gold.
There is something you need us to understand. You're gonna have to do a little better because we are not getting it.
Come on, we all felt that way about this town mysteries and the season. Which brings us to something huge. Why did the children chose to put their hopes into those roots? And how this connects what the man in yellow has been trying to prevent. But here's two things that were set up earlier that connect to this moment. How the boy in white warning about having to learn things for themselves. We're seeing it more and more. And hey, that connects about reincarnation. So when they're inside the bus, this is where the real magic happens. And let me tell you, watching these characters finally crack this code, it's like finally seeing all the pieces fall into place. I mean, first, they're debating if the numbers even matter. I mean, they're right, but Tabitha knows better. Miranda, which she knows later it was her, had that replica in her backyard. And as we know, that's not just a coincidence. Then it comes this brilliant sequence where Jade breaks down all the ways he has tried to solve this, mathematical formulas, astronomical calculations, astrological meanings, even the Fibonacci sequence. I even tried connecting it to Greek language. No success there. But here's where it gets genius. Jim remembers something crucial. Are there 12 notes in a scale? And boom, just like that, everything clicks. We have this excitement of finally getting the answer, and now the desire to explain it all. The numbers are not days or coordinates, they're musical notes. Explains why the 2s and 7s are backwards. They're actually different notes. And they're exactly 12 numbers, matching a musical scale. And Jay's reaction is perfect, because finally, they have something to work with. But then this raises again the question, why music? Why did the children encode their message this way? And what happens when they actually play these notes at the bottle tray? I mean, we know what happens, but now something interesting and heartbreaking about all of this, the tragic irony of Jim bringing the instrument that's gonna lead to his own death. It's like the town's sense of humor at its finest. But why? Well, Jim's conversation with Henry and his advice from Henry about letting go, about trusting his family. And what does he do? Well, he brings Victor's violin that was in his basement. The same violin that's been sitting there all this time. He's literally bringing the key that unlocks everything, thinking he's finally doing the right thing. But here's the twisted part. He warned them, and Tabitha's like, hey, maybe not do it in town. And then Jim provides a crucial clue about the music, the notes. We know that he's trying to support Tabitha instead of fighting her, like we have seen before. But he's finally trusting and helping, and that's exactly what gets him killed. It's like the town saying, oh, you finally want to help, here's your reward. I mean, what's really going on here? If Jim had not said about the music, if he had not been trying to make things right and going all in, maybe the town literally used his desire to be a better husband and father against him, which makes his death even more tragic because he dies right when he's finally supporting his family. And that flashback to season 1 is just heartbreaking.
What it was like when it wasn't like this. It was like before.
Because in that line he says about how things like they used to be, well, they cannot go, and how things used to be. After season 3 finale, everything is changing. I mean, this is from writing at its most twisted. The moment Jin decides to stop fighting and start helping, that's when the man in yellow decides he needs to die. It's like watching someone walk right into the town's trap while thinking they're finally doing the right thing. How this is going to affect Tabitha and the kids, even Ethan, going to their last conversation together. Just heartbreaking. Which brings us to something huge. The bottle tree is not just marking graves or telling stories. It's a message the system used, encoding their request for help in a way that could survive multiple cycles of the town's existence. Again, but why? Why did they choose music? Well, because Miranda and Tabitha and Jade, Christopher past life, used to sing them lullabies.
We used to sing them lullabies.
And this revelation changes a lot of things about how we thought we knew about the music. It's not just some random code, it's deeply personal. Even to the man in yellow, like we can see how the music in the diner plays by itself, and also the music box. And what's heartbreaking about this, Miranda and Christopher past life used to sing lullabies to their daughter, who was one of those sacrificed children. I mean, it's incredible reveal, but it's also heartbreaking. I love it. I'm sad about it. And here's where it gets seriously messed up. The children encoded their desire for help in musical notes. They use the same melody from the lullabies their parents sang to them. This is why the song just appears in Jay's head when he looks at the numbers. Some part of him remembers singing those same notes to his daughter centuries ago. It's not just muscle memory, it's soul memory, which explains something huge about the boy in white cryptic message. Why he kept saying again, learn from themselves, and how the children chose a language their parents would understand. I mean, what's really interesting is these kids turn their parents' lullabies into a cry for help, knowing that someday, and this is my theory, an understanding of it, when their parents were reborn or again come back into the town, they have recognized the melody. So it's not even the lighthouse. Maybe it's important, but who knows. But that's not just clever, that's heartbreaking. They've been waiting all this time for them to remember them. And again, let me tell you about this gut punch moment when Jade plays the violin. Because when those notes start playing, it's not just music, it's memories flooding back to the most horrific betrayal imaginable. I mean, think about what Jade realized in this moment. They, as reincarnation OG or one, didn't just try to save some random children. They tried to stop their own daughter from being sacrificed along with all the kids who were taken against their will. These settlers, these so-called community leaders, they just took these children. No warning, no choice. no goodbye. And now we know how it gets even more twisted. The children were not just killed, they were betrayed by their own community.
One in the dark. And then they were murdered.
Miranda and Christopher were probably the only two people who tried to stop it and denied the Man in Yellow's offer. And again, the Man in Yellow turned their failure into an eternal punishment. But again, why? So that's the question that I imagine the show is gonna answer in season 4 and season 5. I mean, imagine just now discovering that you've been reliving different versions of trying to save your daughter for centuries. That's why Jade again has been obsessing with that symbol. And this is why the boy in white told Victor everything was changing. And how he's now changing as well, because for the first time, their parents are remembering what was done to their daughter. The more success Jade and Christopher, now Tabitha, Miranda, etc., which makes me think that if they free the children, they also free the boy in white. Now, speaking of dangerous and insane, think about how crazy this is. The Man in Yellow showing up in daylight, the town changing its own rules, and not in a good way. Let's break down why this is terrifying and how it set up season 4. Up until now, daylight was safe. It was like the one rule they could count on. The monster only came at night, but now the Man in Yellow just walking around in broad daylight, which shows something huge about how desperate the situation has become. The town architect is not hiding behind his monsters, he's taking direct action because memory is more dangerous than any physical threat. The rules that kept people safe during the day, gone. I mean, think about it. How do you protect yourself when the big bad can just show up whenever he wants? Those talismans, maybe they're not gonna work against him. The safe houses, all those carefully built defenses, mean nothing if the Man in Yellow can just walk up in broad daylight. What other protections are about to fall apart? The town again is not changing. It's becoming more and more dangerous. And who else is going to die? Now we have two storylines connecting in a way, and that is Julie and Ethan going into the diner and Victor and his dad. Beautiful moment. So let's talk about this insane revelation about Julie time travel being part of a predestined loop. I mean, this is serious. This is gonna play out in season 4. Julie opens up about what really happened in those ruins. It was not just a blackout. She literally traveled back in time and through that rope that saved Boyd. But here's where it gets more twisted. We got two Julies in the town. And if you remember back in season 1, that monster that's asking Julie, "Don't you remember me?" Which means this has happened all before. We can even see him in the caves, so there has to be a reason why. But when Ethan says, you cannot change the story, Julie was able to help Boyd in those caves. Maybe this is the reason why they provided this line about how it cannot be changed. And also the monster. So is she part of a time loop that she doesn't even know it? And maybe this is how they can travel back in time. I don't know, there's so many things that they can do with this. I'm excited to see it in season 4. I mean, we know that she's going to do it because she tried to save Jim when she says this is where it happens. So they're gonna discover that Jim died, but also how Julie is trying to stop it. And going from the scar that she has or injury, she gets hurt by the Man in Yellow. And this is my theory, the town is literally built on these repeating patterns. So that's really, really exciting. I mean, think about it. She's going to go all the way back before they even arrive, going again from the monster that told Julie about if she remember him. And this explains again why Julie felt drawn to those ruins in the first place. And hey, we even see her with new hair, so that's gonna be interesting, that wig. Hopefully she doesn't have it in season 4. Now another huge revelation, and finally guys, Eloise is dead. Finally, we get confirmation that she is. I mean, I'm talking about the audience, not about the show, because it's sad. But let me tell you about this absolutely gut-wrenching scene between Victor and Henry, because watching Victor try to deny his father's love after what he reveals. I mean, think about how this conversation plays out. Victor saying how he gathered all pieces of Eloise, his sister, then telling Henry the little remains of his family's tragedy in that grave. And when he says, "You don't have to be my dad anymore." Now, this is not just sad. That's someone who's been trying to cut the last emotional tie they have because he thinks he doesn't deserve it. This is what makes this scene so powerful. His response is immediate and absolute. And Victor knowing what happened with his mom is like the last puzzle for him to finally heal. And now that Tabitha is Miranda, oh my god, that's gonna be so incredible. Imagine that reunion. Imagine Tabitha saying to him, "Hey, I'm Miranda." And then having your husband again, Jim dying, which was your new husband, then Henry, who was your old husband, and Jade, who was your original husband. That's gonna be absolutely crazy. And give me season 4 now. So that's the whole season. Oh my god. Wow. What a journey. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and share my thoughts about it and what I think about how it was. I mean, it was good. It was a good season. It had some filler stuff that could have been removed. Maybe the writer strikes affected the season, but so many incredible moments. Chen died. We saw Henry coming back and see his son who thought he was dead. Now they're finally looking for answers. Julie's time travel. So many incredible moments that I have to give it to the writers. I guess waiting and waiting gave us the answers that we were looking for. Now that's the whole breakdown. If you're into this point, super grateful for all the support. Cannot believe From is over. I have to wait 2 years for the next season, but thank you all so much for your support, for all the love, and for being supportive to the channel. Super grateful. But what are your thoughts on the finale? Leave in the comments below. My name is Christian from Premiere. Now I'll see you in the next one. Bye one.